Welcome to The Jewish Lens, a podcast to discuss anything and everything from a Jewish perspective. Now, please help me welcome the man who controls the media, your host, Jonathan Rosen.
Hello, and welcome to another edition of The Jewish Lens. I'm Jonathan Rosen, and today I'd like to welcome someone who's a writer, an activist. She's the author of the blog A Mother in Israel, and we're going to discuss that. But first, we're going to talk about her son, Hayim, who was murdered while protecting someone else at Kibbutz Halit on October 7th, 2023. Please help me welcome Hannah Katsman. Hannah, thank you for coming on today.
Can you say that again? Hannah Wacholder Katsman.
Hannah Wacholder Katsman. Did I get that right?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So let's go back a little bit with you. So you grew up in a traditional home in Cincinnati, I was reading, and you're the daughter of Holocaust survivors?
Yes, I was. I think I only saw one of your interviews, but I saw you were talking with a guest extensively about her parents, and I'm pretty. Each year I speak about them on Yom HaShoah. This year I spoke twice. And I'm actually going to Poland for the first time at the end of the month.
Okay.
This year we're going to my father, and two of my children, we're going to my father's
oh, wow.
The shtetl, which had 7,000 people and 5,000 Jews in 1939. So, just interesting that you said it, setting off an interesting thing, I think, that because my mother was born in Germany.
Okay.
Her parents were refugees from Eastern Europe, and her father left Germany in 1934 because my grandmother had brothers in Sacramento who'd left, before Hitler came to power. And my grandmother and my mother and her brother and sister came 2 years later in 1936. They came to California. So my mother was a refugee. She was about 10 years old when she got to California. But she was very, very profoundly affected by her experience in Hitler's Germany. Mm-hmm. And my father was interviewed. I was watching the interview, which I don't think I'd ever watched it until the end. I used to have a disc, and now nobody can watch discs anymore and easily. And I found it on the internet in the National Library of Israel without having to go through any lengthy bureaucratic process. So I rewatched it, and at the end, the interviewer asks him about his first wife. My mother died in 1990, and my father remarried a few years later. And so she said to my father, was your first wife also a survivor? Was she a refugee? And my father says, no. Her father was born in Galicia, and then he escaped to the United States, which just skips an entire generation because he and my grandmother were both born in Galicia, and they met and married in Germany, gave birth to 3 children in Germany, all of whom ended up in the United States after Hitler came to power. So it was really, really a complete erasure her story, and kind of reflective of what my house, of the central role my father and his past had in the house. And so when I speak now, I always speak about both of my parents. And when after Hayim was killed, I think it was in the foreword, they said he was the grandchild of survivors, and I used to not say that both my parents were survivors, but I decided not to correct that, and I let it stand.
So if you saw another interview, you know that a lot of survivors, I was just curious, so that was not discussed much with you when you were growing up?
Yeah, I was born in 1964, and by the time I was growing up, it was already talked about more. My brother, who's almost 10 years older, was appears at the very end of the interview, and the interviewer asks him, and he says, I really didn't know anything about my father's story, and my my son knows a lot more. He asks a lot of questions now. So I was more aware, and people, I think that those 10 years made a difference. But I personally didn't do a lot. I didn't enjoy reading about it. Wasn't interested till I was an adult, till I became an adult, and I started reading more
to find out more about what happened.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
so I read that, you made Aliyah in the 90s?
Right, 1990.
1990. So what made you decide to go at that time?
Well, I think I was raised with a very, very strong Jewish identity. And I think that's because both of my parents were born in Europe. Even though we weren't strictly Orthodox, there were people who were more observant than we were in the community, although we were, Sabbath observant. But we weren't fully accepted by the Orthodox community because we weren't, strictly observant, and also because of my father's job. But at Hebrew Union College, teaching Reform rabbinical students, and he had many graduate students too, some of whom weren't Jewish. But but there was something more authentic about my Judaism. That's how we felt, like compared to the homes of my friends whose parents were born in the U.S.
So, and you moved, I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, there was just a different feel. It felt like more authentic. Like we didn't celebrate Thanksgiving really.
Okay.
Maybe in a very, or Mother's Day or anything like that. We celebrate the Jewish holidays, and I took off 2 days, I went to a Jewish day school, public high school, and stayed, had a lot of extra classes and so on throughout high school, and a year in Israel after that. But I think that I always felt I was going against the grain in the U.S., and there was something about, the Jewish life cycle, the calendar, and so on that really appealed to me about living in Israel.
Okay.
My husband at the time, was very, very Zionist, and we didn't have a lot of Zionism in my house per se. But my ex-husband did, and he was really the driving force. But there were also things that appealed to me about it. And wasn't close to my family in the U.S. And my mother died right 6 weeks after we made Aliyah. So,
oh, wow.
Yeah.
And you lived in a kibbutz when you moved?
No, never lived on a kibbutz. We lived in Petah Tikva, which is pretty urban. Okay. It's like outskirts of Tel Aviv, very suburban in some ways, urban in the suburban in the bad ways, urban in the bad ways.
Well, so let me ask you about Hayim, because I was reading a lot of things about him, and so he had a wide variety of interests. Gardener, mechanic, musician. So before we discuss that day, can you talk a little bit about him as a person?
Sure. So he was my second child. Our oldest was born in New York. We lived in New York at the time, and he was a baby when we came. And Chaim was born a year after we made Aliyah. Mm-hmm. He was very delightful, just a delightful baby, funny and friendly, and but as he got older, he was always very popular, had a lot of friends. Girls always liked him, but boys also, he was always surrounded by friends, and he liked action. So, his father and I were both these polite Americans, and so it was challenging for us because he really liked action, and he really wanted to fit in, and we had ideas, that were different from his friends' parents about things, and so he was always challenging us, and he would love to argue. Love to argue from the day he was born. And, but he was clear, he was very bright. He was a great student. Teachers liked him. He just wanted to be, with people all the time. And, very, very curious, always asked deep questions. My friend told me, yeah.
No, go ahead, Dad. Your friend said what?
Told me a story. I'm going to tell you now. She told me the story recently that she was my neighbor for a while, and her son, her in-laws, and my ex-husband's parents had been friends in Seattle, and so they were neighbors for a while. And her oldest son was about 3 years younger than Hayim, and I don't know. Hayim was, I guess, about maybe 9, I don't know, and he convinced her son to make some deal with some, excuse me, just a second, some Pokemon cards. And he ended up convinced her son that he should make a deal and he ended up with a better Pokemon cards. And her son had no idea, he was totally fooled. And so she actually went to Hayim and asked him whether he thought that was fair, and he gave them back.
That's a great story. So he chose to live on the kibbutz. He moved to the kibbutz there, and first I want to know what drew him there specifically, and what did he love most about kibbutz life?
Right. So it's really interesting because, as you haven't mentioned, he became quite a big peace activist, but he did a lot of things that were, very Zionist. And one of them was going to live on this, obscure kibbutz, far, far away. It's one of the furthest south.
It was like an aging community over there too. That's what I read.
Right. So he had a friend from high school who wanted to start his own community. And, housing is expensive in Israel, and everywhere it's hard for young people just starting out. Mm-hmm. And that was a cheap place, so in the South, it's much cheaper to live in the South or in the North than it is in the center. And his friend wanted to start a new community, and the government said to him, you can start your own community, but here's a place where they need young people and there's space. So he managed to convince a few friends to come. I don't think Hayim was the first, but they had quite a group. It's called a garin, or a seed. And they began doing all the things on the kibbutz, like planting. And there's a video of them from 2014, with the tractors. Hayim started a bar there once a week. And at the same time, so his friends say that when he first came, he said, I'll move chairs for you, but don't ask, I'm not going to get involved in the social life of the kibbutz. You heard that line already? Did you?
No, I didn't.
Yeah, so it was a big joke because he became very, very involved in the kibbutz. Yes. And he was even the chair of the residence committee, of the steering committee before he was killed. So what attracted him there? I mean, he definitely liked the equitable aspect of it, the communal aspect, that everyone had a role, and there weren't, in theory at least, rich and poor. And he even wrote something about Marxism in the kibbutz newspaper that one of his friends read recently. He decided he started editing the kibbutz newspaper. And he So he was very, he had a TV on his TV. It said, the revolution will not be shown on TV. He had, like, it was painted in red on the screen.
I was smiling because as soon as you said, well, I'm not going to get involved, that's usually when people like just dive right in, and it sounds exactly like what he did.
Right. Right. So he really liked the laid back, where we lived in Petach Tikva. It was an affluent neighborhood, and there was a lot of ostentation, and he really wanted to get away from that. So, So as I said, like his TV, he didn't watch TV, and he didn't have. So it was a simple lifestyle, and it was, a lot of very bright people really want to be around other people who are academically or intellectually minded. And Chaim, while he certainly had many academic friends, he was happy to be in a community, that was very diverse in that way. And there were other scholars, in Cholit it happens, but that was, he didn't want to, be in like the cream of a society. He wanted to be with.
And he was very involved in like a lot of aspects. I mean, just like outreach also, it seemed like, and, music, he was the DJ, played a lot of music that like, include everybody.
I'm sorry, did you ask a question? I didn't.
No, I'm just saying that's what it seemed like, that he was involved in a lot of things with outreach and, inclusivity. And it seemed like with,
Right.
he wanted to make sure he played music for everyone.
Right. He had, so when he was in Seattle, when he was doing his doctorate, he was exposed to Arab electronic music, and he started, when he came back, he opened a small business where he would DJ concerts, and he would only play Arabic music for his set. And one of his friends said, yeah, we would like be patient until that set was over, and then we would do what was something else. Not everyone liked it, but he really felt that music could bring people together, and he wanted Palestinians, to feel comfortable at his performances. And people from Rahat, which is the only Bedouin city in Israel, which Chaim worked there as building 2 community gardens.
Very nice.
And with women in schools, with the staff in elementary schools. So, so we knew people from Rahat also, and there were people from Rahat who worked on the kibbutz too. 4 family members were kidnapped on October 7th from Rahat, from Cholit.
But who had been from Rahat.
Who came from Rahat to work in the cow.
Right. So let me ask about that day, because, you said at the open, he was murdered by Hamas on that day, October 7th. Can you walk us through a little bit what you know of Chaim's actions on that morning? Because everything I read, just an incredible, like running to help neighbors.
Yeah, so he woke up that morning. He didn't have his gun. He was on the advanced guard of the kibbutz. He had trained, he had attended training with a weapon. He asked them if there is a way not to defend the kibbutz without a weapon. Are we going to learn nonviolent ways of defending the kibbutz? That's what he asked, joked with his friends. But he had gone to India, and he'd come back like less than 2 weeks before, and he didn't have he hadn't retrieved his gun yet, or they hadn't returned it to him or whatever. That was definitely should not have happened. So he went out, it was quiet, and he found his neighbor who had been murdered, and he went into his friend's house, his neighbor's house, and there was some blood on the floor. It turned out afterward that was the dog who had been sick or something, was from the dog, and the neighbor was actually hiding on the roof. He came to the Shiva, and he described how he went up on the roof for about 15 hours, and there were some drones from Oz, and he hoped they wouldn't spot him. But the kibbutz, anyway, then his neighbor, she'd only been there a few months. She asked him to come to her house because she was scared, and they hid together in her safe room in her closet. Now, you heard that he died defending her. It's not quite like that. But she feels, they were both hiding in the closet, and it's not clear why the bullets hit him and not her. There isn't a physical reason for that. It's not like, it says that in some places, and she said that
That's what I read, that she said that as well.
She said that. She said that He saved her life, and he did. Right. He did come and stay with her and comfort her, was with her, and then afterward, she had a whole story. The Chaim was killed right away, and they found his body that night after, around in the middle of whatever. They found him, they identified him right away. As I've said many times, we were lucky because many people were not identified for days or much. So we were able to have the funeral on Thursday.
From what I read also, that she in turn helped save 2 children.
Yes,
is that,
there were a neighbor of Hayim.
Right.
Right. So a neighbor of theirs named Adi, she was married with 2 children. Her husband wasn't on the kibbutz at the time, and she actually called him up and asked him how to use the weapon, and she managed to kill one of the terrorists before she was killed. And they brought the 2 small children, one was only 4 months old, to Avital. The terrorists brought the children to Avital, and then they asked her to cover herself with skirts. She took like 3 skirts and covered herself up for modesty, and then they filmed her. They filmed her to show that they were caring of children or something like that. And then they told her to bring the children, and they walked her into Gaza quite a ways, and then they let her go, and they filmed that as well. And she had to make her way back on her own with the 2 small children.
With the kids.
Which was terrifying, if you can imagine.
Of course.
And then when she got back to the kibbutz, she was picked up and brought to safety.
Had you spoken to her, like, in the immediate aftermath?
Yeah, she came. The first thing, like on Monday morning, her mother lives in Jerusalem, and she came to the Shiva with her sister to tell me personally. Yeah.
How did you learn what was going on that day? I mean, did you find about it pretty quickly? Did you have any contact with
him? I didn't. No. I really only knew what happened after Shabbat.
Okay.
He sent me a message, but I really didn't know it till.
Yeah, because I remember waking up Saturday morning with the Shabbat. I remember exactly that it was Shabbat because of that thing. So the events. So you're saying it's a little bit, but he's still like he still went to her to help out. I mean, it's like such
it's fine with me. Whatever the truth is, I don't think he needed to.
Right.
I don't think he needed to. I hope I won't offend anyone by saying this. But I don't think he needed to put his body in front of her. Right. I mean, it's not. I also think that a lot of people I meet, especially mothers of soldiers, parents of soldiers, they want to feel that the death of their child had meaning.
Right.
And then, like this one woman whose son was killed in this accident, which killed a lot of soldiers during the war, not not on October 7th. And then somebody from her son's unit wrote and said, well, because of what happened then, we knew to prevent, to make it safer for the soldiers after that. And I don't, that's just not how I see it. I don't feel there's any kind of heroism or value in his death. Doesn't comfort me at all.
Right.
His death was a tragedy.
Absolutely.
100%. And,
I totally understand where you're coming from with that. Yeah, I mean, I get it. And it's such a difficult, and you've written also about public grieving because, your mourning having to console others as well. So how do you balance that? How do you balance, your own private grief because with such a very public nature of losing someone on October 7th?
I mean, I really, one thing that I do is I accept almost every invitation to speak like you. I mean, I really want to share Chaim's life and values with others. And I do, appreciate talking about it. And just something you said today made me look at things from a different perspective. Oh, you asked me what attracted to him about, what attracted him to the kibbutz. And I hadn't thought about it, in those terms. So that was, so I like that, thinking about things in a different way. And, there isn't, I have another piece that I wrote in Hebrew, which you probably didn't read. It's in a book that's coming out in English at some point. But
what's the book?
It's called, I don't know what the title is in English. In Hebrew, it's called, I did know. It's not coming out imminently in the next few months, I hope. I mean, I sent the English translation is done. It's called Softer Than Iron, I think, is something like that. It's because Swords of Iron is the name of the war in Gaza.
Mm-hmm.
And it's women's perspectives on October 7th, or how it's my essay is a little bit different. It's a personal essay. It's based on it's written in the form of a diary. It's the months based on my experiences in the months after Chaim was killed, and according to the Hebrew calendar. And had a big debate with the editor about the English translation and how much explanation to give about the Hebrew months. But so I wrote there that, I guess at one point I had this image of an old woman, with the picture of her son who was killed many years ago. And she has this corner in her house, and everyone comes in her house and it's it's all a memory of this son who died, who stayed young.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think about that, I think about where am I going to be in 20 years? Do I want, how do I want my life to be? What part will this have in my life? But, one of the things is that Chaim, will not grow older. Mm-hmm. And we won't, we'll maybe learn a few more stories about him. I'm sure there are a few that I haven't heard or that haven't, but basically it's all getting recycled, and what I write is, everything I write also like is kind of set, it sets it. And then even though it's only one tiny facet of whatever I'm talking about, especially as his mother, and he didn't live with me, and I didn't see him every day. So his life, I'm not aware of all the intricacies of his life.
Right.
And so I can't, so one of the things I can do is kind of, try to understand a little bit more and look at things from a different perspective, as a way of freshening it.
I think you're doing a remarkable job with that, from everything that I've been reading as well. I also want to ask about, you mentioned Rahat before, so I read that there's a center that's being established there.
Yeah, so I'd love to talk about that for a few minutes.
Yeah, sure, absolutely.
Some people started memorial projects immediately after the tragedy, and I didn't do anything for a while. And also, my ex-husband isn't involved hardly at all in any memorial activities. It's pretty much me, and he's, willing to let me do pretty much lets me do things the way I want to do them. And my kids, do a little bit here and there, but it's mostly on me. So, I had in mind that maybe one day I'd like to do some kind of project, but nothing really came to mind. And then there's this project called Next October, where they wanted to match bereaved families with startups. And I think they actually wanted to have new startups. I think that was originally their goal, but I guess that was not realistic. And one of Chaim's friends works in high tech, and he had a project, but then he went to reserves. So then they matched me up with this company because it's in English speakers in Jerusalem, called Cause Match, and they do crowdfunding. And I actually have a friend, a more an acquaintance, someone I've known for a few years who works there. And so I met with them, and then they invited me to speak to their team on Zoom. Like, I came to their office. They have in India, in the United States, and in Israel. So it was like the middle of the day, and I spoke to, I don't know, about 40 of their staff about Hayim. And they said, what we can do is we can offer you a crowdfunding campaign, because that's what we do. But you would need to find the right project. So about a week after the Shiva, I got a call from a woman named Anat, who lives on a kibbutz right outside of Rahat. She said it's almost a neighborhood of Rahat. She works in the community center, and she's in charge of sustainability. And she was the one who hired Hayim to do the community gardens. And she brought a teacher in the school, a Bedouin woman. So they both came. And so after Cause Match called me, after I met with them, I called Anat up, and I said to her, listen, we have possibility of raising money for a project. Do you have a project that's suitable? So my requirements for a project were that it be a one-time thing, not something that's going to need, constant fundraising. Right. 2, that it's inclusive. I know that there are people who really wanted me to do a project for the kibbutz, and maybe I still will. But they're starting to go back to the kibbutz soon. But I really felt that it would honor Chaim's memory to have something that was more diverse, that reached out. It wasn't only for Jews. And even though this is in Rahat and it serves mainly Bedouins, it will serve the wider community.
And something that he was involved with himself. He
was involved with it, so there was a personal connection. And And as you said, we talk about my blog, but I know a little bit about marketing, And I knew that it would be something that would get some attention, that it was something different, that you're not your run-of-the-mill project. And I knew that we would get a lot of good publicity. And, I obviously there's many people who don't want to donate to such a project, including people, but that's what we did, and it was very successful, and we'll have another round, and we're setting up because we've had some delays. We've had 2 Iran wars, and but it's very hard to raise money for Rahat. I mean, Rahat we were never planning to fund the entire thing. We were planning to fund about a third of it. And of course the dollar is low, but Rahat it's just hard. It's not like, there are other communities that get funding more easily.
Mm-hmm.
But they're just now setting out a tender to find a contractor, and I think they're about 20% short. So we're going to have another round.
Still doing. Mm-hmm.
What is it? It's a sustainability center. So it's going to have. There is so far no other sustainability center in Israel. There's a recycling center, and there's something that focuses on climate. But this is going to be preserving resources, agriculture, cooking, and climate education.
So I'll make sure to put the information down when I post this as well. So are you in contact a lot with other people who lost family on October 7th? Is there like something that like an active thing that's being done with family members like that, or no?
There's a lot of things. Yeah. I'm in touch. I have a friend who lives in my neighborhood who lost her son in the war. And I occasionally participate in retreats and support groups and so on. So I meet people there. But I don't have a group because I didn't live in Cholit, so I'm not really connected. Even though I'm in touch with a lot of people who lived there, I'm not really part of that community. And I'm not part of, I'm not part of the party, then the parents whose children were killed in the party. Mm-hmm. And so they have their community, and there's a whole bunch of different communities, and maybe I could have found my place in one of them, but I never, I didn't find it. I didn't look for it. I mean, I was very active in the protests, and there's also this organization called the October Council, which is mostly bereaved families, but also people, who lived on the kibbutzim in the South, and they want to have a national commission of inquiry, a high level inquiry, which Netanyahu is fighting against. And so I belong to them, and I've gone to a few of their things, and I'm finding it hard to be an activist these days. So I haven't participated. I give support. I'm part of it, and I sometimes go to their activities. So that's another way that another connection I have. There's another person in my community whose brother was taken hostage after he was killed. And I'm a part of the family circle, the parents circle, which are families of the parents circle for bereaved Israeli and Palestinian families. So that's from all different ages and generations. It's not just October 7th.
Mm-hmm. Well, let me ask you, because I hope you have support for yourself, but I'm just curious, do people come go to you seeking support for themselves because of everything that you've been through? I mean, it just sounds like that would be a tough ordeal for you as well.
I mean, you mean other bereaved families?
Yeah, or other people going through something like that. Yeah.
You know, for soldiers, Chaim was declared a fallen soldier. There's a lot of institutional support through the defense ministry. I don't know. I mean, I can't think of any examples except in a peripheral way, you know.
Well, let me ask you about.
I speak to, yeah, not, I don't really serve that role that much. I'm not really.
Well,
No.
No, all right. Let me ask you about it. I said we would touch upon your blog, so you do have a couple of them, and
Yeah,
one of them is
they're not active, but
they're not active now. Okay.
But I'm happy to talk about them. One is called A Mother in Israel. It was the first one, and I was just telling someone it was the second round of Jewish blogs. There was like the first group of blogs that got in on the ground floor, and I was reading those, and I thought none of them is saying what I want to say, and I didn't think they were that great, at least not on the topics I was interested in. So I started writing, and I remember just like would write my Shabbat menus. I like really just started kind of randomly writing things, and I was so sensitive. And if someone would criticize something, I would take it down. I mean, I was really, really, it was really scary to me. And then I wrote about, I was very active in La Leche League. I helped mothers breastfeed. And
right. And you're still involved with that, right?
No, I haven't been for a couple years.
Okay.
And I just officially retired from La Leche League a few months ago, but I haven't been active. I was a chair, and I also was, before that, I was in charge of accreditation for Israel. So I was very active. It was a big part of my life. And but I wrote about it, and I wrote about like, you know, motherhood, parenting, and so on, and Jewish life, you know, holidays and housekeeping and so on. Because I'm always, whatever I do, I'm always thinking of how to do it better and how to explain it to other people. So then I started writing. There was an article. I started like translating, not, you know, like Israeli news stories that were mostly about women and religion, and talking about them on my blog. And I started getting there was a lot of interest. About a third of my readers were in Israel and about 2/3 in the US. And I found I was quite good at doing that translating and like explaining it so that you know, people who didn't know Hebrew and who didn't even necessarily have much of a Jewish background could understand, although most of my readers were certainly Jewish. And then I gradually evolved into social commentary about women's issues and Judaism. And then, so there was this story about this woman from Beit Shemesh. Her name was Beria Karen, but no one knew her name. She was the Taliban mom, they called her. This woman in Haaretz, Tamar Rot, I think her name was. So she wrote a series of articles about her. She had these groups, and she taught women to take the heels off their shoes and not speak on the phone to men, and very, very, very extreme modesty restrictions. And she had this group, and they would wear these long black capes so that like they would obscure their body shape. And then, so I was writing about her and about this movement, as it were. And then she was arrested for child abuse. She left her 6-year-old strapped to a chair outside, and the neighbors called, and she went to jail for a few years. And anyway, so that's when my blog took off, because I had been writing all about her, and I'd been translating or summarizing these articles, and yeah. So then Eventually I started a cooking blog also. That was like more professional.
Right, the cooking manager.
Yeah. I think that's a great blog. It should be a book or something. It has some really, really great articles, but it's very hard to compete with. I wasn't good at marketing. I knew how to, but it was soul destroying to start promote myself all the time. I couldn't do it. So
a lot of times that's the life of an author. You feel almost dirty having to self-promote all the time.
The same thing is like I became a lactation consultant and I would do home visits, and I also was the same thing. I just couldn't compete with the young people who were so into the marketing, even with all my experience. It was, there were other issues, but I got burnt out basically. But yeah. So yes, I still use, yeah.
Well, speaking of books, I read that you're working on a memoir.
Yeah, that's true. I haven't touched it, not touched it, but I've wanted to write about my childhood. Like I mentioned at the beginning, my father and my mother, and each had very unusual stories, and they were both also very eccentric people, extremely eccentric and unusual. And they both had physical disabilities. My father was legally blind, and my mother had rheumatoid arthritis, which is a very degenerative autoimmune disease. It's very, very painful. But it's an invisible disease because, people weren't really aware. And I was the last one at home, and my siblings were gone, and my parents were both deteriorating at the same time. And so I decided for some reason I wanted to write in Hebrew. And I applied looked into MA programs, and my friend from Alecheli said, "Oh, you should go to Ben Gurion. It's the best. The teacher there is Shimon Adaf. He's the best in the country." And I wanted to get away from, there was Bar Ilan, but they didn't have the type they had either what they called Toldot Am Yisrael, like for an MA, in creative writing, it was either, well, it doesn't matter. Anyway, I also just wanted to get out of the Tel Aviv, even though it's very diverse there too. It wasn't for me. So I went to Ben Gurion and it did an MA, and that was my final project. It's an essays from different periods in my life, and I have not published any of it.
I think you should look into it.
Months before, Erev Rosh Hashanah, right before Rosh Hashanah, the year that Hayim was killed. And that was my last assignment. I graduated and I got my final grade, and I've written like one more chapter. So I started writing more in English again, but I haven't published a lot. I wrote that book chapter in Hebrew that I mentioned about,
right.
That I did write in Hebrew, and I had
I do hope you get back to it. It sounds like it would be a fascinating, journey, at least for things that you discovered. There are a lot of like you mentioned. I speak to a lot of people of descendants of Holocaust survivors, and it's always runs the gamut of experiences. Some talked a lot about it, and some also just never spoke about it at all. So it's always interesting to me that the two dynamics with that.
Right. But my mother really didn't speak about her childhood in Germany. She just said, she would never go back there.
Right.
But I don't think she ever told us
what happened.
Yeah, what she experienced as a child there. My uncle did. Her brother, who's still alive, Adolf, he wrote like an autobiography as in like a seniors writing group.
Right.
And he talks a lot about his childhood.
Well, I do hope you get back to it, and if you complete, I'd love to have you back on to discuss it when you do it.
Thanks.
Well, Hannah, thank you again for taking the time to come on with me. Just again, my how sorry I am, but just, and you're an incredible person. Sounds like Hayim was an incredible person. And again, thank you for sharing his story.
Yeah, thanks very much. I'll send you the link to the project.
Yes, please do, so I can post that when it comes.
Okay, thanks very much.
So let me sign this off. All right. So again, this has been The Jewish Lens. I'm Jonathan Rosen. Again, a very special thanks to Hannah and hopefully Wacholder Katsman, right? Good. So please like, comment, and subscribe.
Thanks for tuning in to The Jewish Lens, where all items used was strictly kosher.